Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our problem gambling prevention presentation tonight. We're pretty excited to partner with the Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center to bring this training to folks. A little bit of background, as people may or may not know, there's been a lot of gambling stuff going on, particularly here in Massachusetts with sports gambling, sports betting, but also the advertising and the things that are out there for people to see and to entice people to potentially play. And so we saw it as a good opportunity to bring in some experts to talk a little bit about what gambling is, what problem gambling looks like, and maybe some resources and how you can kind of intervene and get some support for yourself. So at this time, I will turn it over to our presentation, our presenters. Megan.
Thank you, Matt. So I will be sharing my screen. So let me do that first. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me? Perfect. So hi again. Thank you so much for making time to show up tonight. It's dinner time. So today I will be sharing a little bit about problem gambling prevention, as well as some of the resources available in the community. And like what Matt mentioned, I and also my colleague here who's on the chat, Kit, we're both working at Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center, and we are also trained in problem gambling treatment. We provide individual counseling support, and that's why we're here. And we're just going to hopefully help the community understand a little bit about what is problem gambling, and also how can we support those who might be struggling with problem gambling. So for the agenda for today, I will be spending most of my time talking about problem gambling, and then some of the programs, activities, resources, and support that are available in the area that you can look into. I'm trying to hopefully save around some time at the end for Q&A, as well as a short survey for those of you who are here tonight to fill out, to just give us some feedback about this presentation and how we can hopefully do more of this in the future. As you can see, the slides are in bilingual because we are providing another similar presentation, same thing, but in Mandarin next week. So that's just giving everyone a heads up. If you know anyone who wants to attend who speaks Chinese, they could sign up for next Thursday night. Okay. So I'm just going to jump in and start. It's interesting because oftentimes in the community, I hear a lot of people ask us, so is gambling bad? Or why are you talking about problem gambling? Are you saying that problem gambling is just like anyone who's gambling? So it's actually a very common question, and we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. To begin, we're going to start with the basis of the definition of gambling. So gambling can take in the forms of betting money or any type of material goods that has value to it on an event with an uncertain outcome in the hope of winning additional money and or material goods. And there are a varieties types of gambling, and this is like a really long list, but it's not conclusive. There's more. These are just some examples. I'm not going to go over them into like specifically one by one, but we are going to spend a little more time today just talking a little bit about sports betting, since it recently became legal in Massachusetts. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But as you can tell, gambling is not just limited to being in a casino. In the Chinese immigrant community, we also have mahjong, which is a type of board game, a way to socialize with each other, and people sometimes bet money on it as well. And as I mentioned, when we hear the word gambling, usually in our head, we think about the casino, the scratch tickets. But there's also other forms of gambling. And sometimes we might not think about just the game. We see like bingo, raffles, the stock market can also be viewed as a form of gambling as well. And gambling can take also place at a carnival game, as well as in your office, in your workplace. So gambling is actually very common, and we can see it in a lot of places and in our daily lives. It's also currently widely available online, including sports betting, and it's very easily accessible. So to elaborate a little more about sports betting, for those of you who are not familiar, usually take advantage of just excitement and the enthusiasm of sports fans for sports games or important tournaments like the Super Bowl, and giving them a way to kind of interact with the team. And they can place bets for the game as the game is going on with their friends sometimes. And usually during this state of kind of excitement, some people can let their emotions dominate their behavior and make bets that they might regret later. Also, I think Matt mentioned a little bit earlier that like there's a lot of advertisements and just like online, offline based sports bettors. Sometimes you can see from those advertisements, they usually sometimes tell you that gambling can be determined by your own skill or knowledge or analysis. Like if you like know about the sports and how the team goes, you could probably win, but it's actually a wrong perception. And it's still a form of gambling. So why do people choose to gamble? It's actually there's a lot of different reasons, sometimes a variety of combination, but sometimes people just want to gamble for fun. There are also times where folks are trying to gamble to access money or to make fast money. And especially for some of the folks who have marginalized identities in the community, sometimes they might go gamble once and realize they win and realize what they make is like more than what they make in a month. And that could be another way for them to go back because they hope to make more money. Socialization is a big one, especially among the young adults population, especially with sports betting becoming widely available online. Actually, the young male adult population is the population or demographic that is mostly involved in sports betting, according to the current statistics. And we hear that a lot of them are just, hanging out with each other, and it's a form of making friends and staying in the friend group. And sometimes it can appear as a peer pressure. Escape problems. This I'm going to introduce that a little more. And what we mean by escape is for folks who are experiencing different levels of emotional stress, physical pain, or just like their daily reality life is just so difficult that they find ways to escape from it. And gambling could be a way to cope with the stress. Or when they gamble, they feel like they're, away from the reality and they can just stay in this alternative space where they don't have to think about any of the difficulties and pain and challenges in life. And lastly, competition. Just like human nature, we can be competitive, and it connects with the other reasons. Like when we were having fun and gambling with friends, we also like to compete with each other. So there's a lot of different reasons. But does that mean gambling is problem gambling, which is the question that I raised in the beginning, and I hear it a lot from different people. And this graph hopefully could help us see it in a better visualized way. So it shows you that there's a spectrum. So 95% on the spectrum, you can see there are people who don't gamble, there are people who are social gamblers, serious social gamblers, and professional gamblers. And then the 5% over here on the right are the problem gamblers and the people who are struggling with a gambling disorder. So the answer is no. Gambling does not mean problem gambling. And we're not saying that anyone who gambles is engaged in problem gambling. So what is problem gambling? essentially it's this, for those who are dealing with problem gambling, they experience usually an uncontrollable urge to gamble despite negative consequences in their life. It can be seen as like a form of addiction that could contribute to poor mental and physical health, loss of money, financial problems, conflicts with family, friends, and coworkers. And it could interfere with their daily life functioning. And sometimes people lose their job and they're not able to sustain whatever they're doing before in life because their life has been so preoccupied with just gambling. And this is just like a more recent statistics about sports betting in particular. Sports betting shows significantly higher levels of problem gambling than other forms of gambling, and the risk of addiction is higher for young adults, especially sports bettors, than for those who have any other age. And this is like a personal just guess that this is probably relating to just this is being and taken in a form online. It's also a pretty something popular that's happening, especially among the young adults group. And young adults are going through a stage in life where they're trying to make friends and they really want to be around friends. And this is a very accessible way of a form of gambling that people can go into. So how do we know if somebody is struggling with problem gambling? In the trainings that I attended previously, I remember someone said that problem gambling or gambling addiction is really hard to detect. Sometimes it's kind of like they call it the invisible addiction because it's hard to see signs, especially from the outside or from the appearance of someone. Someone could look perfectly fine and they might be struggling with problem gambling. However, for those who are struggling with problem gambling, their mind is just occupied and just filled with just the thoughts and the urge to continue to gamble. And it's hard for them to focus on other things in life. They spend a lot of time gambling. We hear examples like someone will take frequent breaks at work. They go to the bathroom somewhere just to place some bets online or through their phone. Some people will make some reasons or excuses and leave family events or just like throughout the day get out to place bets. And it's common to see them lying or hiding about their behavior with family and friends. And this might be related to the money that they're spending or just the behavior in general and how frequent they're engaged in it. We also see a lot in the community where problem gamblers will borrow money from each friends and family, and they will need to depend on others' financial assistance. And sometimes it does get to the point where someone will try to acquire money by fraud or theft. Chasing losses, this is a phenomenon we describe as usually people who are engaged in problem gambling. They usually believe and hope that they could gamble and put more money in to win back the money they lost. And so it kind of goes back into a cycle, and they feel like they want to just go back and just win everything back, and they lose more and then they get more money and then they go back in. And it's just this vicious cycle that is not very helpful. And sometimes some things that we could pick up is somebody who might seem very irritable or restless, especially when they're told to stop gambling or even themselves try to stop gambling. It's hard. So these are just some general signs. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the demographics that or the population that are at risk. So I'm not saying that these traits are representative of people who are problem gamblers. That's not what I mean. It's just data does show that this does increase the risk. So male are at a higher risk of problem gambling than female. Usually the young adult population ages 18 to 24 are more at risk. There's also folks who might grow up in a family context or have people in their family who are engaged in problem gambling, or the culture that they live in is very gambling friendly or promotes gambling. That could be another risk factor. And racial inequity, this piece is essentially talking about there are higher rates of person of color problem gamblers because of the iniquities and the system being broken. For example, people of color tend to have more difficulties getting a loan comparing to folks who are white. And gambling could be another access of getting fast money. And also those who are dealing with mental health disorders, including substance use disorders, as well as smokers or just people who are addicted to using nicotine. These are all factors that we see that could increase the risk of developing a problem gambling issue. And here's just a pie chart to kind of show you the age of people who are dealing with problem gambling. So you can see it's kind of the majority kind of lies around this range, but we do see it across the lifespan. Well, not babies, but starting from 16 to 24 all the way up to 65 plus. And here's just another list of risk factors. Some of them I have mentioned already, but I do want to point out one of this risk factor, which is living within 50 miles of a casino. We all know that Encore opened in Boston, and a lot of folks around the area are going to Encore now. And we know that Encore also has a free shuttle that goes around the city and pick people up and take them to the casino. And in Chinatown, there's a shuttle that comes to pick people up every 30 minutes. And I like to joke that they're more reliable than the T. So it's, again, another risk factor because it's so easily accessible. Like you can just get to the casino so easily. So we talked a lot about what are some signs and some of the risk factors for problem gambling. So how can we prevent problem gambling? To be honest, there's no like tricks or any like easy answer to this, but we always try to educate and provide education to the community about thinking of the money that you spend on gambling as the cost of entertainment. Don't think of it as a way to make money. And we highly encourage folks to set a dollar amount, a dollar limit, and a time limit when they engage in gambling. And we also tell them to leave when they reach their dollar and time limit, whether if they are winning or losing. Again, just reminding them that you'll probably lose because just see it as a form of entertainment and accept the loss as part of the game. Don't borrow money to gamble. Don't try to chase losses or chase the money that you lost, thinking that you will win back. And we don't encourage using gambling as a way to cope with your emotional or physical pain or stress. We recommend you seeking alternative coping skills or seeing a professional, maybe in therapy for that. And also, like what I'm doing today, we want to continue to talk about the warning signs and promote awareness about problem gambling so people don't just see this and think, is problem gambling just gambling? No. So I have finished the portion about just talking about problem gambling in general as a topic. And the next section, I will be talking a little bit about the resources as well as some of the programs we offer or we collaborate with other agencies in the area. But before I do that, I want to put a pause and see if there are any questions in our group. And if you have questions, you're also welcome to type it in the chat. Okay. if we don't have any questions, I'm just going to move on with the resources. And when I'm done, there will also be additional time for questions as well. Let me just shrink the camera. Okay. So for the programs that I will be introducing, I'll be talking about some social activities and services that are free and open to the public. And these are all funded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Office of Problem Gambling Services. And before I introduce the activities, I do want to give a little bit of context. So some of the social activities that we created in collaboration with some of the other AAPI nonprofits in the area are intended to promote and try to create safe space where people can come and find ways to de-stress and have fun and hang out with friends and hopefully build social support, because based on some of our needs assessment that we conducted in our community, a lot of folks are saying that they go gambling or they go to the casino mainly because it's a way for them to, it's a leisure, it's like a way for them to de-stress. It's like a leisure, like a hobby they have. And a lot of folks we serve are immigrants who have jobs that sometimes they get out of work really late, and when they get out of work late, the casino is open, nowhere else is open. So it's very easy for them to just go to the casino with their friends. And also another factor is that we learn from our community is a lot of folks feel kind of isolated and lonely as an immigrant living in America, and they don't really know where to go to find friends or connect with people. And usually when the casino is open, they like to hang out with their friends there. So we created these activities mainly it's centering around some of these needs that we're hearing from the community. So in Boston, at Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center, which is where I work, we have two different programs. The first one is a ping pong karaoke night. This happens every week on Tuesday at the Powell Arts Center. It is a very popular event. A lot of folks come and they kind of do ping pong. There's a spontaneous dance group happening. It's like a form of exercise for them. And then there's karaoke happening. We also have an AAPI Community Ambassador program, and we created this program again with the intention of hoping to promote more awareness about problem gambling in general, but also just especially in the Asian AAPI community, because there's just so much stigma around this topic. And when people hear about it, they turn away. And this program is actually centering around a holistic topic around mental health, financial, we say mental wellness, financial wellness, as well as physical wellness. So we don't just say we're talking about gambling. We try to elaborate on broader topics so people can come into our events feeling like they're being educated on these different topics. And for this event, if you know of anyone who might be interested, it happens every month. Sometimes we do hybrid, sometimes we do in person. And I am hosting this event. And actually for the next event, we're doing something around physical wellness, which is a healthy baking event. And I think I put it on here. Yes, it will be May 8th on Monday from 9:30 to 11. So if you know anyone who are interested, they can feel free to email me. And there are also activities in Malden. So two of these activities, one is also in a ping pong and board game is happening at the First Parish Church. This is Monday to Thursday. If you know of anyone who are looking for a space to social, this is a great one to drop by. I heard they have intense ping pong tournaments there. And also the Malden Resident Monthly Meetup is just another safe space for folks to go every month if they have questions or just want to gather for resources. Last one is in Quincy, every Monday, 8:30 to 12:30. And essentially it's a place where people can get coffee and seek support if they need resources or just have questions in general. I forgot to mention that these are hosted by different nonprofit organizations, and their names are listed in here as well. So in addition to the social activities, we also at BCNC provide counseling services. In the beginning, I introduced myself and also my colleague Kit, who's here tonight with us, and we are both trained in providing problem gambling treatment and individual therapy. So we are trying to hopefully make this resources available in the community, especially for those who have language barriers to access. And we also support family members or friends who are supporting those who we're struggling with problem gamblers. We also, I forgot to put it on here, but we offer our services in English, Mandarin, and Cantonese. So those are some of the local activities and resources that our agencies are engaged in, but there's also a lot of other resources that are out there. There's a lot of different helpline offered by different government or nonprofit agencies. I think these are especially helpful, even if you're not struggling with problem gambling, but you know someone who is and you're not sure what to do. I encourage you to use the helpline. I myself actually used the helpline once when I was supporting a client, just to get like an update on some of the resources that my client was looking for. And these helplines do offer translator services as well. I also put the Voluntary Self-Exclusion Act program on here. This is actually something that is offered by GameSense, which here's a website right here. And what that is for those who would like to sign this exclusion program, they voluntarily exclude themselves from going into casinos or being able to use the services in the casinos. And this is something that GameSense offer for anyone who wants to sign up. And GameSense is an organization that are also in the casino, and Encore, you'll see their little name there, and they have people who can help you if you feel like you're concerned about your problem, your gambling behavior. You can talk to them and they can offer you options or resources as well. There's also support groups out there. I know that Gamblers Anonymous is a great one. They have support groups both online and in person. You can go on their website and see what are some of the ones that are in the area. And again, I'm not going to go over every single one because I also have the website on here, but I really highly encourage you to share these resources and to learn more about them yourselves, to see the options out there. And I think that's everything for today's presentation. So I'm going to open up the group for questions. I also have my contact information on this slide. If you have additional questions or want to follow up later, you're welcome to email me. Emailing me is probably the best way, but I also have my number on there. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. Do we have any questions?
I have one question. How often in your experience working with folks have they mentioned the access of the apps being kind of their introduction to betting or sports betting, where previously maybe they weren't exposed to it and didn't have access to it, but now that they have access to it, they find themselves using it more because it's so easily accessible?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I actually personally haven't worked with anyone who is struggling with problem gambling, especially sports betting. So I can't really say anything on that. But from the trainings and the events that we've attended, when we learn about sports betting, we hear that it's very common and it's a big concern because there's a lot of gray area around being able to, there's an age limit for using the apps, but again, a lot of folks who are underage could also access the online gambling platform and jump over the hoop of the age limitation. So there's still not a lot of policies protecting like underage folks around that. Yeah. And Kit, you're feel free to jump in or add on if I missed anything.
Megan, there is one question in the chat.
How will one be able to quit sports betting, especially gambling done with peers? So I hope I'm understanding this question correctly. So how can someone be able to quit sports betting if their peers are all doing sports betting or gambling? And again, I remember that I've heard a case where family members were able to find professional support. I think the family members contacted a specialist who does gambling therapy and connected with the kid who was dealing with sports betting and was surrounded by friends who were doing that. And the kid was able to access the therapy and as a way to learn about and reflect their behavior, and was able to become aware that this is something that is actually negatively affecting their life. So that's just one example I've heard. So I guess really trying to connect the person themselves or the people that are in their community to professional services, and hopefully if they're willing to seek help, that would help. Yeah. Ian, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Megan, and thanks, Matt, for inviting me. Ian Wong from Tufts University. And sorry, I came in late. I'm just running, so I apologize if we talked about this. As you probably figure out, working at Tufts University, I work with young adults, right, 18 to 24-year-olds, and starting to work on some gambling issues. So this is the question I have with the Asian American population in colleges and all that. And I really don't know anything, so bear with me as I fumble through my question. I mean, as you know, in growing up Chinese too, I know how normalized gambling can be too, and also how secretive it can be when you have this gambling. Do you have any advice about young adults coming to college, from this group that, like you said, with sports betting, everything else, in some ways it's normalized from your family, but you can run into problems pretty quickly. You don't always use the resources on campus. There's one thing about being in Chinatown right there, but now being separated from that population. And like you were saying too, you can get in trouble fast, meaning this financially, and you don't want to go back, because I was on another call talking about drugs and alcohol the other day. And one of the things we discussed about Asian American communities, Asian communities, how you don't want to be a burden to your family either, and saying, I need help. So, the last thing you do is go back to your family and say, well, guess what? I'm in this horrible debt with cash. And like you said, too, they'll stop talking. The one thing that's hard about gambling, because I used to work at DPH, so I worked with them back then, is that you always think you're one game away from making back all your money. If I only hit this one horse, if I hit this one jackpot, if I hit this 121, all my debt will go away. So do you have any thoughts, comments? Again, especially with some of the young people I work are separated from their families per se.
Yeah, thank you so much for just sharing about your concern. And honestly, what you shared is very relevant, and it's still very relevant in the community because we are serving mostly the Chinese immigrant community. And I'm hearing that even though there are professional support, oftentimes there are barriers that we face, especially in the Asian community, because of the shame and stigma associated with seeking help, or even just acknowledging that they might need help. And I think this is something that we hope to continue to, the stigma is something that doing something like this, like the presentation tonight, is a way to try to fight the stigma, is to promote awareness. And I don't know if on campus there's any resources or presentations or the events that are centering around promoting awareness about the concept of sports betting and problem gambling. And also letting folks know that if they seek support, like for example, if they come to BCNC for help. Our individual counseling services are confidential. We don't tell their family about it unless they're underage, then that's another situation. But if they're adults, we try to protect their confidentiality, and we try to create a safe space where if they're willing to, we try to work together with them to figure out what to do about it. So it's not a perfect system. Some of the helpline, even though there's translator services, you still have to use English to request for the translator. So something we're continuing to work on. But yeah, I don't know if I answer your question, but I do relate with some of the concerns you're right.
You did. I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
We keep going. So thank you.
Thank you.
I can add some on this topic. So one thing that I would recommend parents or the teachers to do some education with the youth. So there's some resources online is teaching youth about the arts. So there's one really fun activity is like what is the possibility to hit a jackpot versus what is the possibility for getting hurt by the toilet. So it was a really fun activity for young people to learn the arts, and that will help them to know that, well, gambling is not something that we saw it in the in the internet saying that, well, it's really easy to win the big money. So it actually helped them to know the odds, and it's also helped our parents and teachers to start a conversation. So I'm going to try to find the resources, and I will share it into the chat.
Thank you, Kit. Have any other questions from this group?
I have one more question. This is it. That right now you can't watch TV, turn on the radio, or anything else without a gambling ad coming on, right? I'm not kidding. I feel like every other commercial, no matter what social media I'm listening to, is an ad. So can I ask you this, and it's a big question? How do we counter that? What do you think would be the big thing? Because young people, old, everyone's getting constantly just fed about sports gambling, just constantly. And so, do you have any? I mean, how we can, go up against this constant, at least this wave, this tidal wave of this pushing this stuff?
Yeah, I think I actually saw the sports betting ad on one of the city garbage cans the other day walking by Chinatown. So I can relate with that. So I can provide my personal answer for this, but if anyone in the group who has additional insights, please feel free to chime in. Instead of blocking the ads, which I feel like it's almost impossible these days, I think it might be helpful, maybe let's say for parents to point out that, let's say we were walking and point out the advertisements they see, let's say about sports betting, and have a conversation with their child or youth and talk about the topic of sports betting and potentially the risk of problem gambling. And instead of ignoring or blocking, why don't we just point it out and actually address it? We also know that in Chinatown, we see a lot of ads from Encore. And that's just something I was thinking, like, maybe it can bring the child and walk around and point out how many ads that are related to gambling in this area. And how do you think that affects you? And then maybe provide information about what we learned today as a way to educate. So, yeah.
The one thing I was going to say that I found, and this is more of a comment than just a question, but we've been flooded with sports betting, and a lot of the professional sports leagues have partnered with a lot of sports betting apps or companies to promote. And then the other day I saw something where all the major sports teams joined a coalition to try and limit the amount of exposure on the ads. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? you're partnered with them, they're plastered all over all of your sporting events. And then in the other breath, you're saying, well, we need to think about eliminating this. And so I always talk about like follow the money and like where the interests are, particularly for professional leagues. But I didn't know if that was something you also noticed as well or had heard about, but just something that struck me as wildly contradicting.
Mm. So if there are no additional questions, I'm wondering if Kit, you can share the survey for everyone to fill out. We basically have a survey that takes 2 to 3 minutes, and we just hope that you could provide a brief feedback and any suggestions for tonight's presentation so that we could hopefully provide things that you're interested in learning more about in the future. So Kit, it would be great if you can share that.
Yep, just share it in the chat.
So, thank you. So I will leave you to complete the survey, but if you have any lingering questions or you want to follow up, you can contact me. I can share my email again in the chat as well, so you can follow up with me.
And just to say again, thank you both for putting this together and hosting it. I think it's important information that we're trying to get out to folks. And hopefully we can continue to do more education and awareness around it. But this is a good first step for us. So I appreciate your time. And I think we can stop recording now.
Yep.
Kit.